Board of Education meeting for the Phelps Clifton Springs Central School District. Crystal, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do roll call here. Jake Amadon, board member.
Amber Wilkes, board member.
Tracy Altman, board member.
Lindsay Marino, board member.
Matt Murphy, board member.
Don Miller, board member.
Matt Sickles, superintendent.
Crystal Plant, district clerk.
Thank you. If there's no objections, I'm going to pause the agenda for a second and have Mr. Sickles read a statement.
As you're aware, our school community suffered a tremendous loss last Thursday. We're deeply saddened by the unexpected death of Aaron Mangan Isaacs, a special education teacher who has been part of the Midlakes family since 2002. On behalf of the entire district, I want to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Mangan Isaacs family and all those who knew Aaron. The well-being of our students, staff, and families remains a top priority as we deal with the emotions surrounding this loss. Since the loss has so many layers of impact on our school community, the district sought the support of our regional trauma, illness, and grief team through BOCES to support our students and staff. They've worked alongside our pupil support team to help our students and staff through this difficult time. With their help, we've been able to provide guidance and counseling services to students and staff as needed. As you're also aware, Midlakes Middle High School transitioned to remote learning today to accommodate the staffing shortages created by the attendance of staff at Aaron's memorial service. The district supports the need of our staff and community to grieve together and extend their condolences to Aaron's family. We recognize that children may have questions and worries about this loss, especially as they see staff members who are acting sad or upset. This is normal and to be expected. We encourage parents to please contact our school counselors if you feel your child needs additional support. At this time, please join us in a moment of silence as we extend our thoughts and condolences to the Mangan Isaacs family, as well as everyone who knew Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Amber. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Any discussion on the agenda as written? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. So getting through it, the next item is the consent agenda items. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda items, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda items carry. Our presentation for the night is the Annual Audit Report Review by Ray Wager. Ray, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Wow, it certainly works. What I'd like to do is just spend a very, very short time talking about your annual audit, your financial condition. I was able to spend a nice time with your Audit Committee before this meeting, and we went over your finances in quite a lot of detail, and we had a lot of good discussion. So what I'd like to do is just say a few things as far as the audit. The audit process went very well. The timing was good. The adjustments were very minor. So the audit process itself went well. At the end of the audit, not only do we look at the numbers, but we also look at your internal controls, and we come up with recommendations and comments, and you'll see what you have in front of you should be the full financial audit, which is some 64 pages that hopefully everyone will read, all 64 pages. And you also have a management letter, which is a very short brief. There's only about 3 items in there. We found no significant deficiencies, which if we did find any, we would have to report those to you folks. So the audit went very well. Your financial condition now is extremely good. Last year, your equities in total went up about $1 million. It was, obviously, you know that it was a very difficult year financially, besides all the other issues, because districts did not know where they stood, especially with state aid, because there was things going on in Albany that were very difficult to follow and figure out where you were going to end up. Fortunately, schools all ended up with pretty much more revenue than they anticipated during the year. So you ended up increasing your equities by about $1 million. Your total reserves, which obviously are very important, at the end of the year total about $9.6 million, which is very, very positive. Included in those reserves, and I'm sure you're totally aware, the reserves are all for restricted purposes, but one of the most important one is the dollars that you put into your capital reserves to help finance projects, construction projects, and also bus purchases. So that reserve you've utilized very well in the past, and you're on a track to continue to utilize those reserves to help offset local costs on new projects. So that process is extremely positive, and you've done a good job with that so far, and hopefully you'll continue with that. You also have about $3 million in a debt service fund, which over the future you will be able to utilize some of those dollars to also help with your budget process. So you're sitting in a very good position financially, and if you have another turbulent year where state aid is kind of crazy and you don't know where you stand, you certainly will be able to weather the storm because your positive financial condition. So you've done a really good job. The other thing which is noteworthy is in your new budget process that you're not using any fund balance, regular fund balance, to balance your expenditures. And that is also a very positive thing, that you're not relying on the budget to generate a lot of surplus to put back into fund balance. So that's, again, a good position to be in. So hopefully this year will be a little bit better in a lot of areas, and but financially you're really in good shape. Any questions? Any general questions at all?
So I know no one's read the 64-page document yet. We all just got it. Any questions on the process or general information questions? Or, I mean, I heard him say a few times we're in really good shape, and so that's always fun to hear. If you want to take a moment to read anything, though, and see if anything jumps out at you that you want to ask about, that's fine. But we don't have to either. And just to remind the rest of the board and everybody, the Audit Committee, which Matt and myself, and was supposed to be Ryan, but he's not here today, did meet with Ray and for about 45 minutes prior to this meeting, and so we did have a longer discussion. We'll give our short report on that also. Are we good? Sorry. I see. All right, Ray, I think we're good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray.
My pleasure.
Thank you very
Good-
much.
Good luck.
And before Keith leaves us, the board has not had an opportunity to meet Keith, but I do want to introduce and thank Keith Henry, who's been our interim business administrator during this transition. He's done a great job for us. He'll be with us for a little longer. But since it is the first opportunity for him to be here, I wanted to thank him publicly. So thank you, Keith.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Keith. Yes. Awesome. All right, so moving into reports. The first report is on the Fort County School Board Association. I have nothing in particular to report from that, though we will have a short discussion later about a paper that's at your desks on, from their legislative committee, and we'll work on that, but I have nothing else to report. I don't think Ryan does either. Anything else on Fort County to discuss? So then B is Audit Committee. Matt?
Sure, so just to reiterate, like Jake had said, we had our audit committee tonight prior to the board meeting where we met with Ray, and he dove a little deeper into the management report with us just to break down the numbers a little bit further. And, again, just to reiterate, we're in a very strong financial position. Some of the things that we did last year in preparation for the budget, not knowing what the budget cycle was going to be like, that really helped us, and then some of that unexpected state aid had helped us as well. So all those are good things that allow us to, fund our capital reserves, get those projects going and use that money to offset some other budget things if we, need some things or some of the positions that we look to add. So again, all good news there. He was very satisfied and complimentary, so all good things for sure.
Thanks, Matt. You good? All right, Mr. Sickles, Superintendent's report.
Okay. I'd like to take a moment just to sort of talk about the trauma, illness, grief process in general and specific to the situation that I spoke about earlier with Aaron Megan Isaacs. We learned of her death late Thursday afternoon, and within an hour, we had called our two TIG teams together for the elementary school and the middle high school, since Erin had taught in both buildings throughout her career, and we knew there'd be an impact. And we had probably 12 to 15 people on a Zoom call within an hour starting to plan, including the regional TIG team through BOCES, who has been a tremendous source of support for us. Unfortunately, this is the second time in 6 months that we've had to seek their support on a large scale, and they were wonderful and immediately responsive at 6:30 at night to meet with us and help us game plan immediate messaging and to have a plan for the next morning. So trauma, illness, grief as a process is designed to support the many different manifestations of grief for students and staff. It acknowledges that not every person, no two people grieve the same way, and it tries to support people and give them their space. And because people grieve differently, to try to restore the school environment to a sense of normalcy as quickly and as appropriately as possible. To not rush the process, but to acknowledge that not everybody's in the same place and to try to have a sense of normalcy while providing that support. And that regional TIG team has really been a huge asset, but our teams have learned a tremendous amount from them and continue to grow and just do a great job. I do want to, give a shout out to both of our TIG teams in the two buildings, but also thank the BOCES regional TIG team. and as well as the Marcus Whitman School District, Canandaigua, and Bloomfield, all who sent counselors on Friday to be here. They were a great source of support for our counselors and really helped us meet everybody's needs. And I want to also thank the many other schools in the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES who, reached out offering additional support. We learned late Friday afternoon into the evening of the date and time of the memorial service, which was today at 10 a.m. So we worked quickly to gather information about staff who intended to attend, and therefore we did make that decision to switch to remote learning for grades 7 through 12 today, but we're able to stay in person for K-6. And I just want to thank the administrative team who worked tirelessly from the moment we learned of the tragedy to manage, support students, staff, the change in schedule. And I gave them the night off and told them, to take a night at home with their families as many of them worked through the weekend to make sure that we were prepared. So I just want to give a shout out to the admin team. I do want to call attention to one aspect, a particular aspect of our switch to remote learning at the 7-12 level that caused a little confusion, and that was our half-day CTE programs at the Finger Lakes Career and Technical and Career Center. So last year, when we were in the hybrid model, every student at the secondary level all year was remote 3 days a week at least. And because of that, whereas normally, in a normal year, like this year, more normal year, students who attend the half-day programs at BOCES are transported from the school to BOCES and back again. But last year, because so many kids were home, or they were home 3 days a week, we had to use our drivers differently, and kids were picked up from their homes and brought to BOCES, and then brought back to their homes. That took several bus drivers to pull that off. This year, since we're fully in person, and coupled with our bus driver shortage, we don't have that capacity to transport, especially on short notice, to pick up kids at their homes and bring them to BOCES and then back to their homes again. So while we didn't deny any students the opportunity to go to BOCES if they were already driving themselves, I know Mr. Bayrossi was also authorizing verbal authorizations for kids to drive themselves with BOCES, had signed off on that. And if any parent could bring their child, they could go. BOCES was also prepared to provide remote learning for those students who couldn't get there, but we simply did not have the transportation capacity, especially with about 15 hours of work time notice, not even work time, to get that situated. So moving forward, this is something we'll have to continue to do if there's a day here and a day there, isolated, where we have to make that switch. We're not going to be able to accommodate that old model of picking up kids at home. And we're hoping that this never happens, if we have to switch to remote learning for an extended period of time, then we'll reevaluate the use of our transportation staff at that time to see if we can accommodate. But for, again, a day here and a day there with short notice, we just simply don't have the transportation capacity to do what we did last year. I'm going to pause there for a second before I transition away from this whole situation. Are there any questions?
I did hear you saying that, though, Matt, that BOCES was prepared to be remote with our students.
Yeah, so I spoke to Erin Fairben, the assistant superintendent from BOCES who oversees that program, and she confirmed that we could authorize students to drive for the day, but she also said they would be prepared to provide remote learning for those students who weren't able to attend.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Another unfortunate incident on Friday night, minutes before the homecoming football game. One of the referees assigned to the game experienced a major medical episode. I want to thank the many school personnel and first responders who provided immediate medical assistance. The referee was transported to a hospital via Mercy flight, and though I have limited information, I understand that he's in stable condition and has improved, but that's very general information. The game was postponed on Saturday night after the referees, in discussion with the athletic directors and coaches, decided they just couldn't officiate that game, and we certainly supported that decision, and the game was postponed to Saturday. Our pupil support teams in both buildings were alerted on Saturday to be ready to support any students who may have been upset because it was a traumatic situation at the game. We will, at the appropriate time, probably be recognizing some individuals for their part in reacting so quickly and with a positive result. Couple other things, or one other thing. There was an issue with the ambulance getting from where its normal staging location onto the field, and I don't know why this was never encountered before, but it wasn't able to get past the concession stand or through that area, and had to go around and come around to the elementary side. So that could have been tragic, the loss of time. Thankfully, it wasn't. Moving forward, or at least for the time being, the ambulance is now going to stage itself on the elementary side, where it has direct access, straight shot in. That might be the long-term solution, but I know Mike Reefsteck's also going to be looking at potential changes to the fencing at the main entryway to resolve that issue. But I did want to acknowledge that was one little hiccup that was encountered on Friday. Very quickly, at the last meeting, we presented the strategic plan. Since that meeting, we've met with Warner School, developed their management plans. We're in the process of finalizing those, streamlining the plan, and sort of consolidating overlapping areas and initiatives. And we expect to be able to provide some brief updates on October 18th and propose the plan for board adoption at the meeting on the 18th. We're making good progress, just putting the finishing touches on streamlining the plan, and expect to be ready on the 18th. We continue to work with Ontario County to prepare for COVID testing of staff and students. We're just waiting on they were training staff, I believe, tomorrow that they hired through an agency, and we're waiting for supplies to come in. We're hoping to begin testing staff as early as October 18th. And then optional testing of students will follow probably a week after that, if we don't encounter any hiccups. One new development is that all screening tests for all ages of students and all staff members will now be a self-administered cheek swab. At one point, at some ages, it was going to be a spit test, but now it's going to be the cheek swab for everybody. So information regarding optional screening tests for students will be shared with parents as soon as all the details are finalized. We don't want to put information out while things are still in flux. Diagnostic testing is a third testing platform that we'll be setting up. That could start sooner, and that's going to be for any students or staff who are symptomatic on campus, and that's going to be a shallow nasal swab, and that's going to be able to be tested through an Abbott machine right here on campus, and we'll have results within 15 to 20 minutes. So that could start a little sooner than the 18th, and that consent is going to be collected on a case-by-case basis, so the parent can make the decision based on the circumstances at hand, whereas the screening testing will be consent in advance. On the agenda tonight, we have two very exciting appointments, so I want to call attention to two. Tonight, they're visitors, but soon they'll be staff members. I'm very excited to recommend the appointment of Carl DeBosch as School Business Administrator. Carl has served 4 years as an assistant principal in the Victor School District, 1 year as assistant principal at Brockport, had 12 years of classroom experience as a secondary math teacher at Rush Henrietta. He is completing his school district business leader coursework through the College of St. Rose and his internship at the Bloomfield Central School District. Also excited to recommend as our Director of Operations and Assistant School Business Administrator, Matt Palmer. Matt has been actually began his career at Midlakes, I believe in 2007 as a LTS math teacher, and has been a math teacher at Marcus Whitman for the last 12 years. He also serves as a grade level team leader. He's been varsity soccer coach and varsity tennis coach. He completed his school district business leader coursework through SUNY Brockport and his internship at the Marcus Whitman Central School District. So welcome to Carl and Matt, and we're very excited that your appointments appear on tonight's agenda.
Awesome.
And that is my report.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt on anything he just reported there?
I have a question, just going back to the testing. You said the diagnostic testing, that's for if kids are sick?
Students or staff, regardless of vaccination status, if they're symptomatic during the day on campus, then the nurses would reach out to the parent. We're working on a digital method of providing consent so that the parent, unless they wanted to, wouldn't have to drive to campus. Can if they want. And then that would be administered right here in one of the two nurses' offices, and we would have results within 20 minutes.
So no child would be tested until their parent had consented?
Correct.
And what test would be done in lieu of, like, sending them home for an exposure? Would it be the cheek one?
So the cheek one is the screening testing. So parents can sign up. There will be an online portal through the lab that's going to be processing the tests. They register, and then once a week, those students whose parents opt them in on a designated day, they'll be tested. That testing will be overseen and administered by a LPN hired by the county, and that's going to be the cheek swab. The diagnostic testing, if they're symptomatic, then that would be the shallow nasal swab.
Do we know what the accuracy rate of the cheek swab is? I've heard mixed review. I'm glad we're not doing the spit test, right? Because
Right.
I've had experiences where people have got false positives, which has just led to more problems. I'm just wondering what the accuracy of the cheek swab is, since it's not something that we use, that I'm familiar with using.
Right, so they are all considered PCR tests, the nucleic acid tests, so they're more accurate than the Binax cards or the at-home. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but this is the company that the county is contracted with for all of the schools.
So what would be the purpose, or why would I want to sign my kid up to be screened once a week?
The theory is to identify asymptomatic positives that are walking around that, could be spreading it to other people because they're asymptomatic. But again, for students, it is, completely optional. We just have to provide the option and the opportunity. For staff members, testing is required, but staff members can opt out by showing proof of vaccination. And it's a very important distinction that vaccination is not required. Testing is required. Vaccination can be used as a method of opting out. So two very different models for staff versus students. And school, some counties are further ahead, some are where we are or further behind, but participation rates for students for those schools that have started are sort of all over the place right now.
And so that'll be pushed out?
As soon as I have all the details, there's some lingering questions that need to be resolved that I want firm answers to before I put information out to families.
So as a parent, I would have to actually sign something
Yes,
to consent that you're going to weekly test my kid.
correct.
And diagnostically, if my kid was sick, they would call me and I would have to give verbal consent. And
Right, so if they're symptomatic, they're going to call you anyway. And if they're symptomatic, you're going to have to, the child's going to have to go home. A test is going to be recommended. You can certainly go and get your test on your own, but now we're going to have the capacity to save people that time and trouble by having the test right here on campus, if they choose to take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you.
So say there was a potential exposure in the lunchroom. Say my kids, in the high school, I know they sit with their whatever, same children. So say somebody's COVID positive that they sat with at lunch. In lieu of now my child having to quarantine, they can be tested every day and come to school?
Not every day.
Okay.
The screening testing would be once a week. That wouldn't have anything to do with exposure. That would be more to do with community control and monitoring and identifying any asymptomatic cases.
Right.
The diagnostic testing may be applied to the exposure situation, but if they're symptomatic, they're still going to be sent home.
Yeah, absolutely. But say they're not symptomatic and they're vaccinated, right? So there's been an exposure, but so they won't have to quarantine. And
That's as
come
I
to
understand
school.
it now, but those are some of the things I'm waiting for firm answers on so that I can clearly communicate to families, because this is new to the county, it's new to us. We meet weekly, and every week we seem to learn a little new wrinkle. The fact that it's going to be all cheek swab tests for the screening,
Right.
that was new information at 9 o'clock this morning. So
Right.
I want to make sure that I have the final locked-in information to communicate to families.
Yeah, I just hope they differentiate. Like, if you're vaccinated, I think it's a different situation than.
Right,
I think the big kids are a different situation than the younger kids that are not vaccinated.
right.
in my opinion.
They tend to be more aggressive with quarantines. With the younger the students,
Yep.
the more aggressive they are with quarantines. Because of obviously they can't be vaccinated at this point, and the mask wearing tends to be a little bit more of a challenge.
Do you know the nasal test for the diagnostic negatives, are they sent for that second review like it's like a typical? Right, because they say there's false negatives, right? But not false positives. So many of
Right,
them-
so if they're symptomatic, they're still going to be sent home, and they may be encouraged to follow up with their physician, and then their physician may want them retested. Again, exactly why we're taking our time, because we're not medical professionals, and, we're getting support, but this is new to the county as well, and all the questions that you're coming up with, that's what our Monday meetings are, basically. Superintendent's asking a lot of these what-if questions, and the county then saying, well, we got to get back to you on that.
And as far as the screening tests, if a parent gives permission for their student to be screened, is it guaranteed they're weekly screened? Or is it like a random sample of those who have given permission for?
It's
a
really
screening?
going to come down to the capacity.
Okay.
Because we've been assigned, so the screening testing, we can't sacrifice our nursing staff. They're swamped with other things, including contact tracing, plus all the normal stuff. So, they'll assist to the extent that they can, but that's going to be administered by the one LPN assigned to Midlakes and the Midlakes Education Center. So, if we have 1,000 kids whose parents sign them up for screening testing, that could be difficult to pull off on a weekly
That's what
basis.
I'm
And
thinking.
we may have to come up with more of a rotation, just based on
Right.
logistics. So
But
we're
say
waiting
if-
till we have the concrete information, see how many sign up. If it's low, then we're going to be able to test that number weekly, no problem. But if it's a really high number, then we're going to have to work out a system and figure out how frequently. They say that once they get up and running and moving, they could test 50 to 75 in an hour. I think with adults, that's probably true, but trying to get a 5-year-old to self-swab their cheek, I think maybe that
little
could
more
be
time-consuming.
shooting a little high.
About one every 10 minutes.
Exactly. So a learning experience for all of us, for sure.
We're not up against a deadline or anything at this point?
The testing police have not shown up yet. And, some counties are further ahead, but we simply don't have the supplies yet. So, and that's where we're getting it. The county has about a $2.9 million grant to support all the schools in the county. And until, they just got their staffing set, they've got their training set up for tomorrow, then they'll be able to train our nurses on the diagnostic testing, but then we still have to get the supplies in before we can start. So it's sort of as soon as you can, but we just don't have the materials yet.
Good. All right, thank you, Matt, for all of that.
Absolutely.
Moving on to public comment, the Board of Education values the input to the Midlakes community and welcomes public comment on any topic related to board work, with the exception of matters pertaining to individual personnel and/or students. All public comments must include appropriate language and observe proper decorum. Anyone making public comment must identify themselves by name and address. The public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes and 1 comment per person. Individual comments will be limited to 2 minutes. The board does not respond to items presented or questions raised through public comment. However, the board may discuss topics of public comment at a later time and/or contact the individual who submitted comment. Any members of the public here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to board discussion. So the first item for discussion is the state position and position paper survey. So this is, to my knowledge, the first time the Fort County Legislative Committee has done, gathered information in this manner. So I don't, and I think Ryan is our liaison to the Legislative Committee of the Fort County School Boards. So he might have some more information that I don't have about why we're doing this way. But just to remind the board and anybody else that the Fort County School Board Association, which we're members of, is from school districts in the Fort County region around Wayne, Finger Lakes, BOCES, where that provides several services to us as being part of it. And one thing that they do is send people, or they used to send, last year, of course, they Zoomed. I'm not sure what they're doing this year, but send people to the state legislature and to meet with people there and try to advocate for various things for on our behalf. And then they also have contact with our federal legislators. And so one thing that the Fort County School Board does, in addition to the in-person meetings, is create papers that highlight issues, that you can, like handouts. And I know in the past, I remember when I was on the legislative committee 5 years ago, the paper was a laundry list of every possible thing that anybody could want the state to address. It was just bullet, small font. And over the last 5 years, I know that they have tried to to go with a less is more approach and really try to establish a couple ideas that they would advocate for and try and get certain things done rather than throw it to the wall and see what possibly could get done. And so I'm sure this is in that vein, that they're trying really to get a good idea on what we, members of the School Board Association, really desires in would like outcomes on. What do we think is most actionable, what's most important. I don't think this is a vote or anything by school boards, but really just their idea of gathering information from us as directly as they can. So with all that lead in, I will respond to them as best I can based on our discussion tonight. So I'm gonna, so trying to think of the best way to work through this. I really want to, well, I don't know, let's open the floor to any comments. Let me just see, anybody got anything to say before I keep talking?
Well, is there any way that we can take this home with us and email you after we have a little time to look at it, or?
Yeah, we could do that.
It's kind of hard to, have think time about all this.
I'd say just fill it out in your own and send it to them.
Yeah.
Aren't we getting an electronic or an email about it or something? I feel like we were going to get an email. Would that be easier just to respond?
Yeah, I mean, process, you can help me with process, that's fine. All right, and so I guess we can do it two ways then. I could ask you to send me stuff back electronically, or we could discuss it at our next meeting, because we have another meeting this month. And I don't, I'm willing to.
So are we responding as one board, or are each of us, is it, are we?
Their intention, I think, is one board.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes,
I didn't realize that.
yes.
Okay. So my other question is, maybe I'm missing something, but it says, looking back at the 2020, 2021 positions, which are the top three? But it appears that there are,
Yeah, I wasn't sure if
Three.
it was the bold or if it was the diamonds.
yeah.
Are they referring to?
I think they're referring to the diamonds.
So pick 3 of the diamonds?
Yes. I mean, I didn't design this, but I think that's what they're asking.
I think I did see there was a legislative committee meeting on Saturday, on the backup to Ryan, so I don't know if they'll talk more about this on Saturday.
Say that again, Matt.
I think there's a legislative committee meeting on Saturday, I believe.
This Saturday?
This Saturday, yeah.
All
We
right.
got a Zoom link or an email right from Crystal about that, so maybe they'll discuss this a little more.
Okay. All right, let's do it this way then. If you could, well, it's my thought on how, let's do this. Why don't you send me some information in the next week or so, your responses to this, and I will collate it, and I'll bring the responses I get back to our next meeting, and then we can tweak it from there, and if it's good, it's good. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Is there anything on the sheet that jumps out at you that we should discuss or you have questions about? I don't know, I'm just trying to make conversation, I guess. If there's not, there's not.
It still has Governor Cuomo's name on it.
Still has Governor Cuomo on it.
I can get rid of that. Okay.
All right, I'll send a note out to everybody. I don't have when our next meeting is in my head, but a week or two. And send me information and I'll collate it and send it back out before the meeting, and we'll just review it at our next meeting. And if it's good, it's good. they did want it back by the end of the month, and so, and if anybody goes to one of their meetings and brings back some more information, that would be helpful too. Good on that, board?
Yep.
All right, also at your table is the board goals that I sent out a while ago, or that we worked on at our retreat, and we talked some through at a last meeting in executive session. So later on our agenda tonight is adopting these board goals for the year. I didn't make any changes from when I sent it out last. Is there anything to discuss on it now?
Or 1C, like, is there things happening in the high school that are working towards that, or?
1C, establishing ways for the board to gain insight on the student experience directly from students. Amber's question is, there are things happening in the high school for that?
Is that still on the back burner?
Matt, is there anything you want to say there, or should we wait?
My understanding of the discussion was the potential for, anything ranging from a student liaison to, meetings between student leaders and the board themselves. So there had been some discussion last year, but with the
Right.
disruptions of the hybrid model, that did, nothing transpired with that. I know there are efforts to get students more active in student government, and I think, part of the discussion was that those two efforts could help each other, that the board reaching out to students could draw more students into getting involved in student government if they knew they had that voice.
So my intention, in what we were, I think, doing last year, is to, working with Tracy, when we write up our board agendas, to focus on one of our goals as a discussion item in each particular meeting, so that we can discuss how, like with Amber's question there, discuss how we're going to move forward with each particular thing. And so tonight, I'm hoping that we establish these as our goals, and if we need to do any tweaking right now, do that. But then at our next meeting, probably start with number 1 and talk through it some and start getting some ideas on how we can work through them. That's my basic thoughts on what we'll do with this for now.
This is just I don't know if it's grammatical or whatever, but 1A, can we just cross out given to the board? It sounds like personnel are given to the board.
Encouraging regular student participation sessions led by student personnel to the board.
So if we say either encouraging regular student participation in presentations given to the board, led by school personnel, but
Given to the board instead of,
you can either move it up to where presentations given to the board or just cross it out altogether. Because I think it's assumed that the presentations are given to the board, right?
so end it after school personnel,
Yeah.
period?
That's the easiest.
That, I like easy. All right, so we'll cross off given to the board. Okay, anything else? All right, well, if something jumps at you while we go to adopt it, bring it up then. We'll set that aside for now. Back to my agenda. Nisba Virtual Conference. So my understanding, Nisba is the state association of school boards that everybody, all school boards are a member of. Conference once a year in October. Used to be in person always until COVID hit. COVID happened, of course, and their hope this year was to have an in-person conference, but they made the decision recently to not do that and to have the conference be virtual as it was last year. So do encourage people to do what they can to attend that. Tracy,
It's
anything?
it's just the one day. That's, so it's not the full conference kind of has been slimmed down significantly. So it's one day. I think it's 3 or 4 speakers. But if you can
You have the
attend
date?
that. I believe it's, I don't know, we have a lot of emails about it. I should have written the date down, but,
I don't have it in my
we can
head.
send it out.
And do you need, is?
You
like,
do have to
sign
register.
up?
Yeah,
Is
you do
there
have-
payment to that?
It's, the one-day thing is free, but you do have to register in order to get the Zoom links. I want to say it's on the 25th of October. I'm pretty sure it's the 25th of October. There is the pre-conference law conference piece that they always offer. They are doing that one virtually. That's the longer event. I think it's a $200 charge for that, so that part is not free, but the one-day Monday is free. You just have to sign up, register.
In conference attendance for the board is budgeted.
Is budgeted, yes.
Right.
And Crystal is a huge help on registering for things.
Yes.
And so if anybody wants to do it, Crystal could certainly facilitate that.
Right. So
Do you have the times that's running?
the Monday, the 25th, it's like an all-day. I don't think they've given times yet. They had to very recently switch from in-person
I
to
see.
remote because of the hotel. It was going to be in New York City, so there's a lot going on there. The hotel was not able to, so they're sending more emails as they get details, but I don't think they had times yet. They didn't even have the registration, last I knew, available yet, so.
I did
Just
find
be
the
on the
agenda
lookout.
in one of the emails. So it looks like it starts at 8 o'clock. There's a couple different speakers, goes till 12:25.
Oh, all right.
Noon?
So
That's
those
Monday
are
the
long.
25th, yes, 8 a.m. to
so
12:25.
it's just the morning, so 8 to 12:30 on the 25th?
Yep.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Any other topics the board wishes to discuss tonight? Hearing none, we'll move into new business. Letter A is to approve the resolution regarding the appointment of Business Administrator Carl Dubois. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor of approving letter A, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Welcome, Carl.
Congratulations.
And letter B is to approve the following resolution regarding the appointment of Director of Operations, Assistant Business Administrator Matthew Palmer. Any discussion on B? Hearing none, all in favor of approving B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Congratulations. Welcome to both of you. Really looking forward to working with you this year. As you heard, we're in great shape, so let's stay there. It's awesome. All right, but anyway, sorry about that. All right. Letter C, we'll look at C, D, and E as a block as they all relate to our presentation earlier today. Any discussion on C, D, and E? Hearing none, all in favor of C, D, and E, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? C, D, and E approved. Letter F is to approve the fundraiser for the dance. Any discussion on F?
I do want to note that it was postponed due to the rescheduling of the football game, because it was supposed to be Saturday, so the date is to be determined, but the approval is for the fundraising aspect.
So we don't have a date yet on the dance. All right.
Was there is a high interest?
We had 190 kids scheduled to attend,
Wow.
which is really insane because school dances have been dying for a long time. So, to get that many kids is really great news. And we're hoping maybe we'll even get more interest once we settle on a date. Obviously, the administration's had their hands full, but they'll get a date scheduled as soon as possible.
So will they reopen sales and?
I believe so,
potentially
but
have
I
to-
don't want to.
Okay. And
They are
if
open,
somebody was not
yes.
able,
So-
is not able to attend a rescheduled date?
There'll be
I heard there would
refunds
be
available for
refunds.
people who can attend
Right.
the new date, but there'll be ticket sales available for students who decide they can attend.
Okay.
Yes, every child was at the mall getting a dress. Rented every single child there was.
All right. All in favor of letter F, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And letter G is to approve our board goals. Any further discussion on G? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Personnel, looking at retirement, letter A. Any discussion on letter A? Hearing none, all in favor of letter A, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Letter B is 1 through 8 appointments. Any discussion on letter B, the 8 appointments listed there? Hearing none, all in favor of letter B, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And C, D, and E, we can take as a block. Any discussion on C, D, or E? Hearing none, all in favor of C, D, and E, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? C, D, and E are carried. That brings us to our second public comment period. Anybody from the public that wishes to address the board? Seeing none, that brings us to adjournment and executive session. All in favor of adjourning and moving into executive session, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, are now in executive session. Thank you all for attending and for your participation.